In this video, I'd like to go over with you how I go about making a bluegrass style banjo solo out of a basic melody. Step one is to know the melody notes that the singer is singing. Folk song anthologies are a great resource for this, along with hymnals and other things. Look for songs that are in the key of G when you first learn to do this. In the key of G, you'll notice this 1 sharp. That identifies the key of G. Now, you don't have to be able to read music to get some value out of this. Just have to have a little chart that translates the notes to your banjo tab. So here it is. By sticking with simple key of G songs, you primarily will need notes found in the key of G, so all your open strings on the banjo plus the G major scale. Here's the first 2 lines of the song I've chosen to use for our demonstration, Mountain Dew. Vocal songs work best as they will usually have only 2 or 3 melody notes per measure. This will allow us to fit those notes into our rolls. Step 2 in creating our solo is to figure out where each of the melody notes goes in regards to 8 eighth notes found in a typical measure where we play our rolls. For this purpose, I've created this blank tab paper where there are 8 eighth note stems in each measure. You can read in the description of the video below where you could contact me and get a copy of this for your purposes. Notice that Mountain Dew has a pickup note, so that happens before the first full measure. After that, keep in mind that 1/4 note will get the equivalent of 2 stems, a half note will get 4 stems. We even have a whole note, so that gets all 8 stems in one measure. Step 3 will be to place fill-in notes on the empty stems, which will create rolls. The fill-in notes should reflect the background chords, so lots of zeros during your G chords. This melody begins on beat 4, and there's no harm in just leaving a single quarter note to get things started. So it'll be the first full measure where we're trying to find a roll, and you want to try patterns that you're most familiar with, such as an alternating roll, forward-reverse roll, or a straightforward roll. So here we can use an alternating pattern of T-I-T-M, T-I-T-M. Notice that the 3rd note of the pattern falls on string 4, where the melody is, not on string 5. Note too that string 5 is struck where there isn't a melody note, and this is the purpose of the 5th string, to help keep a flow of notes going during your roll without confusing it as a melody note. So our beginning would sound like this. And I choose to hit those fill-in notes on the 3rd string with my index finger. Because they are fill-in notes, you could use the 2nd string if you like that, and it makes it feel better for your right hand roll. So we could keep our alternating roll going in the next measure, and that would sound something like this. However, sometimes an alternating roll may sound too what they call square. It sometimes is referred to as the square roll. There's just too much happening on the beat. So we can change that and try to put that melody into a forward roll and watch what happens. We lose one of the melody notes, and the note I'm showing in parentheses is moved a half beat early, which is the whole concept of syncopation. That's what forward rolls do. They put the drive in the banjo playing because the notes are coming in just a little bit early, pushing against the steady beat. So the tip here is to remember that 3 out of 4 ain't bad, meaning that if you drop one of the melody notes, in this case an open string which had already been played, you're still going to hear enough of the melody, but you're getting a better flow of notes. The roll you choose for the word do could be any of your 3 rolls, just so long as you start with the open 2nd string. so I choose to use a forward roll. All the other notes don't matter because there's only one melody note on beat 1. The next measure, the only melody note is on beat 4, so what I choose to do is keep that forward roll going on into the next measure. So here's the last 2 measures of the first line. Notice the 2nd fret note came in on beat 4 just like it should. Since the timing of the notes in the first measure of the 2nd line are the same as the melody notes in the first full measure, I just choose to use the same alternating roll. I have to adjust the strings I hit, but it is the same roll. So the same for measure 2, just adjust your fingers to pick up the melody notes. The other thing that was going on there is that the rhythm players have moved to a C chord at this point, so my fill-in notes were built around this C chord. 2 on string 1 and fret 1 on string 2. We could continue to fill in our rolls until we completed our solo, but let's go ahead and demonstrate step 4, which is to find places to put in licks. The easiest place to put in a lick is where you have a long pause in the vocal. Take a look at the word few at the end of line 2. There's 2 measures where there are no other melody notes. So we'll hit that melody note first on string 4 and put in the very famous Earl Scruggs fill-in lick. And I like putting a little pinch there to conclude that idea before we come in with and move on to the 3rd line, which has the same melody as the beginning of the song. Let's take a look at how we could have also put in a fancy lick during that long pause in line 1. If you realize that the sound of the 4th fret on the 3rd string is the same pitch as the open 2nd string, you can slide into that note as many licks do. So here I will use a forward roll, and as before, as I continue into the next measure, I continue the forward roll, but at that point I'm going to do a 3-2 pull-off, which puts that 2 again right on beat 4 as I finish the lick. And on into your C chord. As with many solos, when you get to the halfway point, you're able to reuse many of the early phrases that you've already figured out. The only thing you'll have to be careful of is when you get to the end and if there's a D phrase, be sure the fill-in notes reflect a D or a D7 chord. Before I play the whole solo that I've worked up, let's quickly go over the 4 steps that I use to create a solo. First is to know the melody notes that the singer sings. Second is to put those melody notes on 8th note stems so that you can fill in rolls. And that's your 3rd step, is to put fill-in notes on each of those stems to create rolls, primarily choosing rolls that you're most familiar with. And lastly, see if there's any place where you can put in some fancy licks. Remember that the solo you come up with doesn't have to sound like anybody else's. As long as everything plays in time and people can recognize the melody, you've done a great job. So that's the beauty of being able to figure out and create your own solos. You'll develop your own style. So here's the solo I came up with following these steps that reflects my style. I hope you enjoy it.